We welcome you back to Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. And time to talk the Bengals and the Saints. And we go down to the Big Easy. Love that town. New Orleans. And sports anchor down there, Sharief Ishaq from WDSU. Were you working late last night and you're back up and at 'em for us this morning there in the Central Time Zone, Sharief?
I am. Yeah, I work till about 10:45 Central Time. I don't really sleep well. I mean, I stay up late. I was watching the baseball game and was watching some other things on TV after, but it's no problem. It's been the life of mine for 40 years. I don't really sleep well.
I hear you. Lord knows I hear you. Hey, I want to get in. They released the injury report yesterday for the Saints, and I don't know if this is a regular thing or not. I mean, there's some teams out there in the NFL in all the years that I was doing games where, there's some teams that will just load up the injury report, and they'll list everybody and his brother, even if you have a hangnail, just to put them on there. Other teams, not so much. I look at the guys that are on that injury report yesterday for the Saints, and I mean the biggest and the brightest stars at virtually every position on the field. How healthy are the Saints coming into this game, Sharief?
Not healthy at all, Tom. 14 players are on that list. Ryan Ramczyk was on there just for rest. That's the only one that's fine as of right now. There were seven who didn't practice. I would assume most of the players who are limited, minus Jameis Winston, will play in the game Sunday. But the big problem is no Marshawn Lattimore, their star cornerback, who got hurt on the second Tyler Lockett touchdown against the Seattle Seahawks. Chris Olave, concussion. He's on step 3 of step 5. So he'd have to, get the 5 by Friday and have no symptoms. Michael Thomas hasn't played since hurting his foot/toe against the Panthers in week 3. Jarvis Landry, he played against the Vikings, gutted it out with a bad ankle. He isn't practicing. He tried to give it a go before Sunday's game against Seahawks. That was a no-go. Deontay Hardy got hurt. It is just way too many pieces, way too many important pieces, especially on the offense, just going down. Like maybe Olave and Landry are able to gut it out and play Sunday against the Bengals, because what it looks like is Andy Dalton making the start again needs as many receivers, as many weapons as possible. Thankfully, they have Taysom Hill, but they're going to need more than that against, a Cincinnati Bengals that I think is a little bit better than their 2-3 record.
Well, that's highly debatable around here, but nonetheless, we'll get to that here in a second. But I want to ask you, you just basically ripped off a laundry list, and I made the comment in the opening segment about, so many great Ohio State players for some reason seem to end up regularly. Zach Taylor talked about it in his press conference yesterday, that you look at the Saints team and two of the receivers you just mentioned. Olave, a rookie, was off to a very, very good start so far this year. And it's been great for football, not just the Saints, but great for football to have Michael Thomas back if he's able to come back and play again, because, man, what a player he is.
Michael looked great in that first game against the Atlanta Falcons. It took him pretty much 3 quarters to get used to the offense with Jameis Winston, and then he just took over the game in that fourth quarter in that massive comeback against the Falcons. Yeah, having him healthy in the offense is a scary threat for any defense. So they need to get him back out as soon as possible. And then when you team him up with Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave, that makes things even more difficult for a secondary, or just in general, the defense. They can just create a lot of separation. They can create a lot of scary thoughts for a secondary. They can do anything. They can go over the middle. They can go deep down the field. And that's been the tough part for this offense. That's why without some of those guys on the lineup, they get off to these slow starts. Even Jameis, he was hurt. That's been a big problem I see for both the Bengals and Saints, these slow starts. Before last week, Tom, they only scored 2 first-half touchdowns in the first 4 games. Last week, they said they had 2 first-half touchdowns, which is, an improvement. But like I said, that was mostly thanks to having Taysom Hill having a legendary type of game.
Let's talk about Hill for a minute, because he's one of the most fascinating talents, in my opinion, in the NFL. He comes into the league. He's a quarterback. They had certain packages for him, and they'd run him in there, and Breeze would come to the sideline. Then they make the decision this year he's going to play tight end. And now all of a sudden that game he had last week was one of the best games by a player since a merger going back to 1970. Rushes for over 100, scores 3 rushing touchdowns, throws a pass for a touchdown. He's returning kickoffs. He recovers a fumble in special teams. You following the team and the fan base, were they okay with him coming back this year and being a tight end, or do fans and you and those who cover the teams feel like that he should be touching the ball a lot more than he was at least up until last weekend?
Well, Tom, I'm sure you've called quite a few Saints games in your time, and I don't know how many of you called since Taysom Hill's been with the Saints. The Saints fans that might be an understatement. They love Taysom Hill. They want him more involved than Taysom Hill would like to be more involved, mainly as a quarterback. I think he thought, once Breeze left, it would be my turn to be the quarterback. Gave him a shot, and maybe it didn't turn out as great as it did last year. And to be fair, he was dealing with the same thing they're dealing with right now. He didn't have all the weapons. They were just, throwing him out there with third and fourth string weapons. But, I think they're going to get him more involved like you saw Sunday against the Seattle Seahawks. You might see him throw the ball at least 3 or 4 more times a game because they thought they found something there. Hey, why isn't Taysom Hill throwing the ball more? It looked good. But maybe they can't tell him to throw the ball 10 times a game, maybe 3 or 4 times a game, just to keep the defenses honest. Because let's be honest, a lot of us know whenever they line up tight, he's in shotgun, he's running left to right. And for some reason, the defenses still can't stop it. He ripped off, 112 yards on the ground, mostly on that 60-yard touchdown run, but they still could not stop it because he is just a power 220, 25-pound guy that will just run over you. If they need 3 yards, they'll give you 5 yards. And that is kind of the spark this offense could use right now, can keep using, considering it's been still searching for the identity that, we don't know what it is. What's the identity of this team? Will it be good when they finally get everyone back? Will it be in time when they finally get everybody back to make a run? So, yeah, Taysom Hill's the spark they need. I think they need to use him more often. They got to get him way more touches, even if the defenses stack the box so they can get him maybe a little bit loose in the passing game. That's why I think he could do a little bit more damage on some defenses who think he's just going to run the ball. But what he did Sunday was outstanding. One of 3 players to put up those stats. You can lump him in with LaDainian Tomlinson and Ronnie Brown, the one of 3 players since 1950. That's, some pretty incredible stuff he did against the Seahawks.
Yeah, there's no doubt. How's Andy Dalton played? I know he played against Minnesota. That was a loss by the Saints. He comes back and due in large part to Hill, but Dalton was a quarterback, and they put up 39 on Seattle. How's he played?
I think he's played efficient. He's played some efficient football. Hasn't really taken many shots downfield. He took a 1 or 2 against the Minnesota Vikings this week. He made one bad pass that got intercepted. He threw the ball inside, should have thrown it more to the sideline to Traquan Smith, who's having issues catching the football for the Saints right now, and never they need receivers to catch the ball. But he's been pushing the team down the field. It's been efficient. I think he's done a good job in Pete Carmichael's offense. If he would have started against the Carolina Panthers before the Vikings game, in my opinion, I think, Jameis Winston being hurt, they would have won that game, and he would have been even better in the Minnesota game and even better in the game against the Seahawks. I just think, with more time in Pete Carmichael's system, he's going to get better. It's kind of I'd say it's a little bit more complicated system because it's a Sean Payton type of system that Pete Carmichael is running here in New Orleans. And I think he'll be fine. He'll be fine, but it's just it really just it's terrible that he doesn't get to have all the weapons on the field.
Yeah,
it just seems like there's someone always hurt,
Yeah, it makes it so tough because those weapons are so good. Everybody talks around here about the Bengals trio of wide receivers being the best in the NFL. If the Saints have everybody there with Landry, Thomas, Olave, I'm not so sure that trio is not right there with the Bengals for that title. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase coming back to Louisiana, where they starred together, of course, on a national championship team in LSU. A lot of people, I would assume, down there, Sharief, talking about this week and those guys coming back.
It's been like the funniest thing on Twitter. And they got so many fans, Saints fans fighting with LSU fans, fighting with Bengals fans, saying, how could you be so-called Saints fan, but all of a sudden now you're a Bengals fan because they have 2 players who went to LSU. It's just, I love fans. Fans make things very fun. But yeah, Jamar is actually from here who, grew up on the West Bank of New Orleans. So he's said he's going to have 15 family and friends, and I'm sure he'll have a lot more, fans along with Joe Burrow. A magical run. Last time they were a Dome, it was magical. It was loud. They did everything they could possibly do to Clemson and just absolutely crushed them to win that national championship. And this isn't like the Falcons or the Cowboys, the Saints taking on each other. It's just not like a real rivalry. There's no like bad blood with the Bengals, even though it's Who Day. I don't know what that means versus Who Dat. It's so weird. It's just so weird to me. But there's no bad blood. No, honestly, like no one's gonna be like, oh man, we can't stand Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. You can't forget there's also Von Bell and Trey Hendrickson on that team. They were beloved by Saints fans. They didn't want them to leave the building. They wanted them to sign extensions with the Saints. So, I think it's, you're going to have your 500 to 1,000 fans in there wearing their Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, whether it's LSU or Bengals jerseys. And I think some of them are probably Saints fans.
Yeah.
And, to each your own. To each their own. If you want to cheer for them for what they did for the state and LSU, that's cool. But for me, I'm from New Orleans. I went to LSU. I stick to my two teams.
Speaking of LSU, before I let you get out of here, another tie between Cincinnati and New Orleans, or at least Louisiana, let's put it that way, is Brian Kelly. Now, Kelly comes down there. He leaves Notre Dame. The first game of the year, we know the debacle there at the end and all that kind of thing and so on and so forth. They rip off 4 straight wins. Then they go to Tennessee, or Tennessee comes down to the Bayou last week and just runs over them. I don't know if anybody expected LSU to have a really good team this year, but are people pretty excited about Kelly being there at LSU?
Well, right now they're not all that excited, but you have to understand. It's just honesty. I think we have to understand, like, what Brian Kelly inherited from Coach O was an absolute mess. The program was pretty much gutted. You got to think they only had 30 players players on scholarships playing in a bowl game last year against Kansas State. That's how many players that he inherited. They should have probably started off 5-0. Yeah, I understand, but it's just not there yet, Thom. The offensive line is a mess. The offense as a whole is a mess. When you have a quarterback who's scrambling for his life and, some of his receivers aren't catching passes that hit their hands, he's making bad reads, he's making bad throws. It's just the talent isn't there yet. I think it's going to take a couple years for Brian Kelly to get his talent, his recruiting class in. And let me tell you, LSU fans, Brandon knows better than anybody. He covered LSU just like I did. And when I went to school, there is no patience there, but they have to be patient right now because you can't expect this team to hang with Tennessee and Alabama, Ole Miss this season. You're not at that level. You don't have that talent yet. You can't just expect to win 9-10 games in his first year when he inherits pretty much a gutted program. 6-7 wins, that would be great, considering he has to fix a lot of things. So, yeah, there's some fans who are frustrated. And, hey, be frustrated. That's fine. You're paying the coach almost $10.5 million a year. You want him to win. But you got to understand what the type of players he's rolling with right now. That's, not going to get it cut. He says, hey, we need to coach better. They've had 2 player meetings in each of the last 2 weeks. That just goes to tell you there's a lot of frustration within the players and coaches that they need to do better. And, hey, they're in Florida this Saturday, and they've had Florida's number, so they might beat them.
Sharief, I've spent a lot of time in New Orleans, whether it was covering NFL games or back in the days when Fox had the BCS, and I'd be down there for the Sugar Bowl and the national championship, and really came to just when I initially started coming down there, I did not like the town, but the more and more I spent time down there, I just fell in love with the town and the people and the culture. And all of that kind of thing. It just seems like such a weird fit to me that Brian Kelly is in the Bayou. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, sure. Of course. It just seems like an outsider because it makes it a little different because look at the guy, he took over for and Coach Orgeron, who's from the Bayou. He is from Lafourche Parish. That's, South Lafourche High School. That's where he went to high school. That is like, the Bayou. And then you get Brian Kelly, who's from Massachusetts. So, yeah, he's got to adapt. I think he knows he has to adapt to the culture. He's a, dry sense of humor, little sarcastic, and I like that a little bit because that's kind of like how I roll. I'm a sarcastic person. I like him. I like what he can possibly do. He doesn't bother me like a lot of the LSU fans right now. But once he starts winning, I guarantee those fans will start liking him, because when it comes down to it, it's about wins and losses. The more wins you have, no one really cares about the losses that you had the first season whenever you were trying to rebuild an entire program. But yeah, the culture is a little bit weird considering, how we are down here, what we eat, how we party. Just we carry ourselves different than, most of the country.
All right, speaking of, I know there are a lot of Bengals fans that are coming down there to New Orleans this weekend. And, look, everybody knows about Bourbon Street and that whole area. I've been overserved on that street many, many times myself through the years. If they're coming down there and maybe they come down on Friday and they want to hang out, I think the place we used to go to dinner all the time, I used to love that place. Galatois, is that the name of it? But great place. And right there in the middle of the whole, scene down there. Where would you go? What would you do? Give us a quick, sort of travel guide, travel agent for those making the trip down to New Orleans this weekend.
I stay off of Bourbon Street because I'm a local. So the thing I would do, I would go to Frenchman Street. Frenchman Street has so many great bars where you can watch live music, authentic local live music. So Frenchman has always been good on it, even though it's becoming a little bit more touristy, but still a lot of great places to go on Frenchman Street. I go to Pesh. Pesh is one of my favorite places to eat on Magazine. A lot of people, if you like oysters, go to Seaworthy, Drago's. Everyone loves to go there for oysters. A few other places like the San Lorenzo, the Chloe Hotel, Patois, Gabrielle, Piece of Meat. I probably can go on and on about some of the places. I have a list of them. I mean, I can go on and on. Sylvain, Rizzuto's. I mean, there are so many other places. You've been to Galatois, is awesome. There are a few places in the French Quarter that are very good. I mean, Galatois, we go there sometimes as members of the media, and you can't go anywhere wrong. But I could list off places for days to go to eat. I mean, some people like to just go down and just drink on Bourbon Street. I understand that, man. They got a lot of places to drink on Bourbon Street, but you don't have to go to the Quarter. You can go outside the Quarter because there's places on St. Charles. The Garden District has so many places to eat. I mean,
that's what I was going to ask you about. I love that Garden District. Jumping on that little trolley, I assume that still runs up there in the whole 9 yards. I mean, that was a really cool area up there. All right, prediction, Sharief, on the game. How do you think this thing plays out?
Man, the Saints are just so injured. I can't wait to see the final injury report tomorrow.
All right, before you make the prediction, do you think Lattimore plays?
That abdomen injury looked painful whenever he landed on the field in that Lockett touchdown. He didn't. I don't think he plays.
All right, you think Thomas plays? Thomas?
No, he hasn't practiced. No,
okay.
They're on a short week because they play Thursday night next week against the Cardinals. So I doubt some of these guys are going to play that on a DNP so far. So I think if anyone has a chance, it's Jarvis Landry and maybe Chris Olave. Those are the only two guys I think of the receivers that can come back. So it's a 1.5 point spread. I'll go 28-20 Bengals. Could be wrong.
Really?
28-20 Bengals.
Wow.
You guys watch the Bengals more than I do. I've watched them twice this year, and yes, I've seen their offensive struggles. They've also gone against some pretty good defenses, it looks like. Hey, look, we both have our doubts for each team.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody agrees this Bengals team is capable of putting 28 on the board. They've not got that number all year long. Their defense has been very good. So we'll see how it goes. Sharief, we appreciate you up and at 'em. Thank you for your time, and I know you'll be at the game on Sunday, so enjoy it.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Thom.
Absolutely. Sharief Ishaq from WDSU. Very kind. We appreciate his time today and his insight on what's going on down there. I mean, you heard him say it. When that injury report came out yesterday, I couldn't believe it. I knew they had some guys that obviously had missed some time here recently, but man, oh man, that's like it's not an exaggeration. That's like a third of a Pro Bowl team.